The Menendez Brothers Part 2. We're going to be talking with James Buckland, our producer. We're going to talk about the last episode of Charlie Crimebuster, where we talked about Part 2, including the smoking gun that almost blew up in the face of the prosecutors. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this edition of Charlie Crime Talk.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, we want to welcome you to our program tonight, James. We just got through, an amazing election in the state. So I'm thinking that people probably just had almost all the politics they want right now and ready to get down into some real true crime tonight.
That's right. We're actually encouraging everybody to binge-cast.
Binge-cast. I like that word, binge-cast.
Binge-cast, yeah.
There you go.
You can do that by going
there's a whole bunch of places where they can get a whole group of episodes to binge cast on too, right? You want to tell them where they find that at?
Absolutely. That's at charliecrimebuster.com. Charlie Crimebuster, all one word, charliecrimebuster.com. And while you're there, you can see all the episodes that we've had in the past. Just amazing stories of Gabby Petito, the Iowa killings. There were several other incidents that we've covered over the last couple of years now.
The Doomsday Mom, right?
Yeah, Doomsday Mom. Yeah, the Vallow case. There's a whole myriad of them.
Well, that she's going to be coming up for that other trial pretty soon, isn't she?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we'll have to cover that too.
Yep, we'll have to cover it as well. Yeah, there's been a couple of developments as well with one of our previous cases having to do with the Kentucky situation. So that's probably something we'll probably be covering probably eventually at some point. So we want to
Sure, we'll have to pick that back up. That was a very popular couple of episodes that we put out there. I was astonished at how people really, of course, the title was a little catchy. I shot the judge, but did not shoot the deputy.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of resonated. And then, of course, it was an incredible case there, where the sheriff shot the judge.
Yeah.
And if you folks are wondering why the sheriff shot the judge, then just jump back over there to charliecrimebuster.com. I think we did a couple of episodes, maybe 3 on it.
Yeah. There was a couple. And it's amazing. I watched the full video of the shooting, and
did you see that? Yeah,
it's
did you see the part prior to where he reached out for the phone? Did they show that yet? Yeah. Well, folks, you say, "What in the world are we talking about?" That's why they need to get over there and get in on that episode, right?
I shot the judge and did not shoot the deputy. That's the episodes they want to catch up on. Yep.
And there's a reason why he did not shoot the deputy.
Exactly.
But we're not going to tell them tonight. They got to go to the episode.
That's right. They got to go to the episode. That's right.
There you go, folks.
We've also got another channel or another method that they can contact us, not just with charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. They can also text us at 407-917-2211. So that's
I love that.
407-917-2211. Yeah.
Yep.
So
and let's kind of throw it out to the folks too, James, while we're just doing a little housekeeping before we get right into our topic tonight, the Menendez brothers. I'd like to know if folks would, if they would think that they would like to be a part of our program if we did this part, particularly this part, live.
Yeah.
And even maybe have some interfacing where folks can text us while we're on these topics, and in live time. We can respond, and let them become kind of a part of the Charlie Crime Talk too.
That's right.
It's just kind of like you and I sitting here in the living room or the lobby or wherever we're at, let's say, and just opening the door and say, "Come on in."
Come
on in, sit down.
Chat with us, talk with us.
Talk with us, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm certain that would be cool.
I'm certain there are people out there that have many, many questions that they want to ask us about previous episodes or information, how we find some of our information, how we disclose information, how we vet the information to
Hmm.
make sure it's credible. And yeah, there's several ways that we produce the show as well. How
Yeah.
what tools do we use? I'm sure there's questions that they have. So
Yeah, plus, so maybe some topic we're on, they want to know the answer right then. They don't want to wait a week to get that answer.
right, right.
So right there's a good way. Hey, just text us.
That's right.
We'll do our best to cover a lot of the questions that people are giving us as much as we can, and we'll try to answer those questions right on the spot, right on the cuff.
That's right. That's
I,
right.
I do I do them like you do me. Just put me on the spot every now and
Yeah.
then. Throw a question in that I'm not prepared for, James.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times, but it's
Yes, you have.
not part of
Yeah.
our regular agenda. But
Yeah,
yeah. But you've
yeah.
handled it with great grace.
Well,
And,
hey, that's what we do. That's
yeah,
what Charlie Crime Talk is all about. We're talking. We're
exactly,
just we're just
exactly.
taking some time to go over the episode and maybe pointing out some things that we did not point out before, and cover some things, and maybe help clarify some things that might come up from the time we drop it. Right.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so I guess, by the way, before we do that, let's remind the folks that if they'd like to support us, they can go to peacemakernetwork.com, and there they can become a badge supporter for a few pennies a day. But more important than that, James, is that when they do that, they can help us help those brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from
Right.
danger.
Exactly.
Our first responders, law enforcement, and of course, those brave men and women of the military. So we would
Absolutely.
we would encourage them to take a look at peacemakernetwork.com for that.
You know,
Are
it's
we
it.
leaving anything out?
But no, it's interesting you would point that out about our first responders, but it's also a very, very, I guess you could say, sobering reminder when I voted yesterday to think that how many lives were lost or spent for me to have that right to vote yesterday.
Amen
It
to that. Yay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
regardless of who won,
I'll
just
second
the
that. Yeah.
ability,
Regardless of who you vote for,
yeah,
these people have died for us to have the freedom to make this kind of choice,
right.
you
It's
know?
sobering, it's humbling,
Yeah, no doubt about it.
it rocks you to the soul. But yeah.
Yep.
Well, starting out, tell us what is next after the DA's announcement that he would recommend a new sentence for the brothers. What's going on
Well,
there?
yeah, of course, that's how this all started. The
Hmm.
district attorney made an announcement that he was going to recommend
Hmm.
that they re-sentence the Menendez brothers. They had already been sentenced to life without parole, and he was recommending a re-sentence to 50 years in life. And the deal on that is that because they were, in their young 20s and young men when this happened, that they would then be eligible for parole after 30 years, and they've been there 30 years. So that basically means they'd be parole. So what would happen after that is that after some people thought, hey, well, it just means they're going to go free. It doesn't quite mean that because it's got to go to the judge first, and the judge has to approve that resentencing. Then the judge has to resentence them, and who knows what he would resentence them to. But now I kind of think the judge would do that because there's nobody to oppose it.
Right.
Normally the prosecutor is the one that opposes those resentences. But in
Exactly.
this case, the prosecutor is the one who's recommending the resentence. So there should be no opposition. And then after that, even if he does that, there's another step. They've then, if they're eligible for parole, then they have to apply for parole, be granted a hearing with the parole board, and then the parole board will have to make a decision on it. And then even after they make the decision, there may be certain limitations to their freedom.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's I guess the point we're making out is just not a done deal just because he is recommending it. Though in my mind, I'm thinking that it's pretty well the judge will probably go with it.
Mm. Okay. Well, in going back over the crime, you mentioned that the brothers went out and sat on the steps waiting for the police. Did they not plan on covering their crime up first?
That's a mystery to me. It
Yeah.
really is. When I thought about this case and looked back into it again, and I think we did an earlier podcast on this too, but this last group of podcasts, it just really caught my attention. Here they they went in there, they shot and killed their parents
Hmm.
up close and personal, and then they just go out there and sit down on the steps,
Yeah.
you know, and the way they told it, on the tape there to when they were talking to their psychologist, the way they told it was, "Hey, we were shocked that the police didn't show up. We thought of all the noise, commotion, the police would
Yeah.
be there."
Yeah.
So the question I have, what were they going to do? What were they going to say? Hey, I just killed my parents, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, why would they just sit there, you know? Now, after they sat there, they said, I guess they thought, hey, nobody's coming. Let's get rid of these bloody clothes. They did that. We know that. Let's go
Yep.
out and get rid of the shotguns and let's go out and grab an alibi. You know, that's
Yep.
exactly what they did. So the question is, what had they planned to do before?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe that was the time when they had come up first with this idea of a self-defense claim. You know that we thought he was going to kill us, so we did this in self-defense. But here's the thing in the back of my mind about this, and I thought about this again today when I was going through this, thinking of it. You know, James, I'm not sure what we can believe. You know, I mean, these guys were told so many stories, and
Hmm.
they lied from the very beginning.
Hmm.
So how do we know that they went there and sat down on the steps and just sat there? I mean, how why would we believe that? I mean, everything else they told was a lie. You know.
Well, is it?
So in my mind, I'm just kind of thinking they shot him and they took off and they were already planning to do the close, but maybe to the psychologists they were talking to, they were going to basically say, "Hey, we're going to fess up to it and own it." You know, that's why they told him that. But really, it's untelling, really untelling whether they did it or not. You
Do you
know, as
think they
far as
might have
sitting
had
on the step.
a psychotic slip, perhaps, to where that they were trying to grasp with what they'd done?
Yeah, that could have been it. They could have been hey, wow, this is over. I can't believe we did that,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just went over and sat down. That's probably what happened,
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know that they believe they get away with it. I think it's just say, hey, I can't believe we did it, and they just sat down there and looked at each other, and then said, okay, let's get
Real,
out of it,
then
get out of
reality
there.
set
But
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And even when they came back to the house, they thought the police would be there, but the police still wasn't there. So then they had to, manufacture that phone call to the police
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
where they, pretended that they just got there and somebody had shot their parents.
Yeah.
But boy, I tell you, you talking about, I heard that 911 call, and
Yeah. Real
they
sounded
really
real,
were
didn't it?
emotional. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounded real, and Eric was screaming in the background, and they were, it certainly wasn't one of those things where sometimes you'll say, well, this guy didn't show any emotion, so we know he did it. In fact, it was so real, we know now that they really fooled the investigators. The
Yeah. Oh
investigators
yeah.
really, I mean, you always consider them as suspects, but they didn't zero in on them right away. I think a lot of investigators actually believed that they came and that had already happened.
Wow. Wow. So of the alternate theories they investigated, which one made more sense to you other than what the brothers did the crime?
Well, there was, and we mentioned those theories in our podcast.
Hmm. Hmm.
The first one that the one of the brothers tried to get the police to latch on to was that this was a mafia hit,
Right.
which I just I think I said in the podcast, and I think we talked the other week about it. That's unlike any mafia hit I've ever seen with going in with shotguns and shooting one person six times up close and personal
Yeah.
and blowing the head off of your mom almost and all that. That's not the MO of a mafia hit.
More like a
Mafia,
mobster.
yeah, yeah, it does it does kind of relate to a crime of passion,
Hmm.
because crime of passion is usually overkill, and there
Yep.
certainly was overkill.
Yep.
But the mafia was one of them. But I think the best theory that I mean, if you want to know what would have resonated with me if I was investigating that right off the bat, particularly at that time, is that might have been the result of a satanic cult.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember
Hmm.
Charlie Manson
Right.
was
Right.
right back during that time, and that was certainly a crazy, crazy scene. And I would have I would have certainly spent a little time investigating whether there was a possibility if there was maybe some cult activity
Hmm.
in the area. Yeah, and you remember back during that time too. I don't know if you remember it, James, but there was another case where there was a army medical doctor who murdered his family. And it was a really big trial, and maybe we might even do a podcast on it. But he was there, and people thought that there was no way that he could have done that. And at that time, the first thing they thought was a cult
Hmm.
killing. So back in those days, I guess what I'm saying to our audience, back in those days, that was a very go-to place in investigations because
Hmm.
there was a lot of cult activity at that time and a lot of crazy things there. So I guess of the alternative ones, I would have believed would have probably been the cult killing. I wouldn't have gone for the mafia hit. I would have gone for a cult activity, or I would have thought, hey, the brothers did it.
Yep. Yep. Makes perfect sense. Well, but isn't that like the MO of most killers though? They go to the family first. They suspect the family
Well,
members
yeah, I
first.
mean, I mean that is just
Why didn't they do that?
well, they do it because statistics will tell you that most people are killed. Most people in this country are killed by someone who knows them. You know, and the first who knows them better than the family, right?
And most crimes of passion are
Yeah,
by family members.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, so
Yeah.
statistically, if I'm going to look at this thing, the statistics will verify or back me up on the fact that more likely than not, this person's been killed by somebody who knows them.
Well, why weren't the boys vetted by the police? Why
Well,
weren't
they
they
they were they were questioned, I mean, they brought them in and they
gunshot
questioned
residue?
them. Yeah, no, they didn't do that. Remember we talked about
Yeah.
the one was if they had done gunshot residue at that very point, they would have saved like 60 days or 90 days of that investigation. They could have
Exactly.
immediately
Yep.
zeroed right in on the boys, but
Instead of
they
seven
didn't
months,
do
it would have been
that.
4 months.
Yeah, and somebody says, well, you're listening to us, and you say, well, they couldn't do that because they'd have to have a warrant in order to do that. Not necessarily.
Uh-uh.
And even if they did have a warrant, I mean, the way I would have done it as an investigator, I would say to you, James, if you were one of the brothers, I'd say, hey, listen, the first thing I want to do is rule you out so that we
Hmm.
can really go after the killer. That makes you feel good, that I'm gonna
Yep.
rule you out. And I
Right.
said, in order to rule you out, then let's do this gunshot residue test.
Right.
And then if
Right.
you said, no, no, I'm not, I don't want you to do that, well, then what does that say to me?
Uh-huh.
You're really hiding something, right?
Uh-huh.
Then I can turn around, get that warrant right like that, and I can force it.
Yep. Yep.
So it could have been done. They could have checked it, but unfortunately they didn't.
Interesting. Okay, it's changing the mood just a little bit. Tell us tell us about this week's crazy crook.
Our crazy crook story of the week.
You can't make this stuff up.
There, yeah, and it's really catchy in crime, and our fans out there, true crime fans, crime junkie fans, are all very familiar that a lot of times these cases will have these nicknames, and these bandits will have their nickname. Well, our bandit today or this week on a crazy crook is what I call the orange juice bandit.
Hmm.
And by the way, you and I live in Florida, and boy, we got some great orange juice here, by the way.
We do.
But I'm afraid we might be in for some trouble because it may be that this orange juice is attracting bandits and thieves.
Really? Really?
Yeah, because this guy went into a house, had gloves on, ransacked the entire house, went through the drawers, went through everything, did not as much as leave one single fingerprint, and then yet he decided, okay, I'm thirsty. Walked over to the refrigerator, got a jug of orange juice out, gulped it down, and then instead of putting it back in the refrigerator or putting it in the garbage or taking it out, he decided to leave it in the sink in plain view where anybody can see it. So you come home, your house has been ransacked. Somebody's been in there, and you look and you say, "Oh, what's that? What's it? I didn't put that orange juice there. What is it there for?" And if I had been the cop that was coming to take your report, and I did this a lot of times with people when I would go to a house that had had a robbery or a theft like this, I would say, "Hey, go look in your refrigerator." And they would look at me like I was crazy. Why would I look in your refrigerator? Because I could not believe the times that these guys would go in the house and just open the refrigerator up and just make themselves at home, make them a
Oh,
sandwich, do this or do that. And you could tell. Well, this crazy crook left that orange juice there. So then, they took the orange juice container, sent it away, did a DNA test on it, and it came back to someone in the system, and that's how they nabbed this bandit. So this guy, crazy enough to help himself to orange juice, got caught. So that was our orange juice bandit.
orange juice bandit.
Yep,
Leaves
orange
his
juice bandit.
DNA on the
Does that
container.
surprise you that people
No,
would go into the refrigerator
no.
and they were stealing something out of your house and just open the refrigerator and grab a sandwich or take some time to go through your refrigerator while they were doing it?
Well, Charlie, you and I both know that crooks don't think that through. They're not that smart.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I have yet to see a smart crook.
yeah. There you go.
So, okay, back to the Menendez brothers. Tell us
Yep.
about the smoking gun. What was the smoking gun?
Well, there's oftentimes there are smoking guns in a case, and the thing that really blew this case wide open, there of course was the lavish spending of the brothers.
Hmm.
They went through
Hmm.
like $700,000 in not quite 90 days. They bought Rolexes, sports cars, everything else. So, I mean, that certainly got the attention, but they still did not have anything that would give them probable cause to make an arrest.
Hmm. Hmm.
And even then, during that time, they began to talk to people that knew the brothers, and they found a couple of people that the guys had been talking to. But the thing that really blew this case up was that I think it was Eric first went to his psychologist. He couldn't take the guilt, he said, and so he spilled his guts to the psychologist. And then the brother came in, and they both started talking to the psychologist, telling them that they had done the crime. But the psychologist, guess what? He had a mistress.
Hmm.
And, you may think that you're talking to a doctor and he's not going to talk to anybody else, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, sometimes they do. And he actually told his mistress about these brothers that they had killed their parents and that he had recorded them. And so, as these extramarital affairs often go awire, this one did. And she then turned around and went straight to the authorities and told them all about it. So the smoking gun was not only did they have a psychologist and somebody else who knew that these guys had confessed to him, but they had that confession on tape. He had recorded
Wow.
them. So I don't know anything better or a better smoking gun than the fact that you've got my confession on tape.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was the smoking gun.
Interesting. Well, tell us how the smoking gun almost blew up in the prosecutor's face.
Well, it goes back to that thing that people have heard about. It's called doctor-client privilege.
Right.
That a lot of times in some states, clergy have that same protection. That if you come to me and confess of something that you've done as a clergyman or as a psychologist, then I am bound by the ethics of what I'm doing in my role as a psychologist or a clergyman. I am bound to keep that in confidence. And so when they found out that this was on tape, they went and raided the doctor's office, raided his house, found out that he kept those tapes in a bank deposit box. But the whole time they were doing that, the Dr. Oswald, he was telling them, Oswald, he was saying, hey, he said, this is under doctor patient privilege. But the police wouldn't listen to that. They said, no, we want you to play the tape to us. And they played the tape to him. Now, get this, James. Uh, if the judge had come back and ruled that that was protected by doctor client privilege, everything they got off that tape, the confession that the kids, that the brothers did it, the the place where they took their bloody clothes, the place where they hid the weapons, the fact that they went in advance and got those shotguns, which shows that it was premeditated murder because they planned it out weeks in advance.
Right.
All of that evidence, James, every bit of that evidence could have been banned from the court
Inadmissible.
because in the legal term it is called fruit from the poison tree.
Hmm.
If you know if they got that illegally and that was actually protected by doctor-patient privilege, then any of that they pulled out, they could not use in court. So they couldn't use any of that in court. How could they prove their case?
So why did the judge even allow it in court then?
Well, there is a there is one part of that same law that says that I'm not bound by doctor client privilege if in this confession I feel that you're going to harm someone else or you lead me to believe you're going to do harm to someone else.
Mm,
And in this situation, they turn around and told the doctor, you tell anybody about this, we're going to kill you. And we're not only going to kill you, we're going to kill the people that you love. So
mm,
when he said that, that then violated the doctor patient privilege and allowed the doctor to be able to break that bind that he had and to be able to share it. But now,
wow.
even with all that, it became a really problem because they appealed that the judge said that they could do that, and this went all the way to the California Supreme Court. So this was 2 years before this one part of the case was ever resolved enough to take it to trial. This was argued so adamantly that it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And when it went to the Supreme Court said, well, because because he threatened the doctor, we are going to allow the doctor to testify against him. We're going to allow the notes of the doctor to be used, but the thing we're not going to allow is the confession tape where they actually confess
Mm,
how they did it. We are not going to allow that because that's incriminating themselves, and they shouldn't incriminate themselves.
right, right. So tell us what blew up in the defense's face.
Well, think about what I just said there. The
Hmm.
fact that they could not, you see, at this point, the jury in this first trial, they did not even know that there was a confession tape because this could not be presented in the trial. This was banned from the jury. So the
Hmm.
jury had no idea that there was a tape where these brothers actually confessed that they did the crime. They had no idea that that was there, except the fact that the defense came back and the defense kept saying, well, the fact that these brothers lied about what they did, the fact that they did all of this is all a characteristic of people who have been abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused, and it's all characteristic of that. And so the reason that they killed their parents was because of self-defense, because they thought their parents were going to kill them and that they had been so horribly abused. Well, then the judge said, because you brought all these experts on to say that, then the prosecution then has the opportunity to argue the opposite of that. And the way they can argue the opposite of that is for this tape to be played that says that these kids planned this out in advance. It wasn't anything mentioned about sexual abuse, wasn't anything mentioned about self-defense, and then they could prove the fact on that. So because the defense went so strong on that, brought these experts in, that then blew up the smoking gun so that instead of protecting that tape, now that tape was no longer protected.
Wow.
Pretty
Wow.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. It's interesting how the things turned around on them.
Yeah, on both of them. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
you look at the prosecution, then look at the other way.
Well, is there maybe a way that they you think that they could have won the first trial?
Well, we all know the first trial ended up in a mistrial,
Right.
and they did not win the first trial. I'm thinking that if maybe the prosecution, if they could have come back and brought some other experts in to show that the behavior of these brothers was not consistent with someone who had been sexually abused. Because, I mean, how many people have been sexually abused in this country? Unfortunately, sadly,
Mm-hmm.
terribly, thousands upon thousands of people.
Oh, yeah.
But those thousands upon thousands of people don't go out and start shooting people because they've been sexually abused. So if they could have brought some experts in to say the opposite on this, I think it would have helped. They did not bring one expert in as far as what was happening, psychologically on this. All the experts was from the defense, and I think that really gave a foothold, especially with with, as we said on the podcast, the jury was pretty well split gender. The women were for manslaughter, the men were for murder. And I think if the women had heard some other experts come in and say, "Hey, this behavior of this premeditated work that they did is not consistent with somebody that's been abused. Lots of people have been abused, but because you've been abused, you don't go out and shoot people."
Mm-hmm.
But the prosecution didn't bring one expert in, not one at all.
Wow. So, Charlie, what are you going to cover next week then?
Well, next week, the trial. I mean, the first trial ended up in a mistrial.
Right.
So there was a second trial. You see, a lot of people don't realize that this thing went on for 7 years before there was actually a conviction.
Yeah.
7 years, and so there was a second trial. So we're going to talk about the second trial, but more importantly, this next week we're going to really drill in on this idea that these were they sexually abused or not? Can we prove they were sexually abused or not? And if they were sexually abused, is that reason to go and restructure the sentencing of the brothers? So we're gonna zero in on what the prosecutor said, what he is recommending, and I'm going to share with the folks what my personal feeling is about it. And we're going to invite people to share back their personal feeling on it. So we're going to get down to the heart of what this breaking news is all about in our third one. Plus, we're going to cover the next trial and say why this trial brought about a conviction where the first trial did not bring a conviction.
Interesting. All right.
For instance, this was a first trial. They had 2 juries. Second trial, they only have 1 jury. So we'll tell all about that and a lot of other things.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually an interesting fact I was unaware of.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm anxious to hear that. Well, just like the rest of
I'm anxious to hear myself.
The rest of the listening audience, we're all excited. We're all on the edge of our seats. There's really only 1 jury now. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, there were 2 juries in the first trial.
2 juries. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that was 1 for each brother, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Now it was the same case, same court case. There were 2 attorneys and 2 juries.
Uh-huh.
That happens from time to time. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that for next week. Sounds good. Sounds exciting.
Yep.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
you, Charlie.
Remind everybody where they can find us at on all this good stuff.
Absolutely. They can reach out to us at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. They can also do some binge casting at charliecrimebuster.com. That's charliecrimebuster.com. Also catch us here on YouTube at Charlie Crimebuster, and also on Facebook, Meta Facebook at, again, Charlie Crimebuster, facebook.com/Charlie Crimebuster. They can also text us at 407-917-2211.
I love that part, man. That's great. Yeah. And they can reach out with a shout out.
They can reach out with a shout out
at gmail.com.
That's right. Reach out with a shout out. charliecrimebuster@gmail.com.
So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep. For the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.